I want to tell you about the best Christmas I ever had. It was the one I spent completely alone in my apartment, watching old movies and eating Thai takeout at 9 o'clock at night, because my sister had decided I was too embarrassing to sit at the same table as her boyfriend's family. She called me just an electrician, said she didn't want Reed's parents getting the wrong impression of where she came from. What she seemed to forget, what she was very carefully choosing to forget, is that I was the electrician who had been writing every single check for her medical school tuition for the past 2.5 years. My name is Isla, and I own an electrical contracting company in Denver. I started it from scratch at 26, with a used van, 3 pieces of secondhand equipment I found on Craigslist, and a commercials license I'd spent 3 years as a journeyman to earn. By the time I was 33, I had a crew of 9 and a client list that included 2 hospitals, a chain of dental offices, and half the new construction going up on the east side of the city. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because you need to understand who I was before I became, in my sister's words, a liability. Briar is 7 years younger than me. 26, first-year medical student at a private university out east, and she's been telling people since she was 16 that she was going to be a cardiologist. My parents were never going to be able to afford it. My dad worked in warehouse logistics for 30 years and retired with a bad knee and a modest pension. My mother cleaned houses for most of my childhood. They are good people. They worked hard. But they don't have $24,000 a semester sitting around, and neither did Briar. I did. I offered. Nobody pressured me. When Briar got in, she called me crying, and I told her not to worry, that I would cover it, that she could pay me back someday if she wanted, or she didn't have to. I meant it completely. She was my little sister. I was proud of her. I wanted her to get there. So I paid, semester after semester, without missing one. The call from my mother came on a Wednesday evening in the 2nd week of December. I was locking up the office, telling Hank to have the crew out by 7:30 the next morning for the hospital job. I saw her name on my screen and smiled, figuring she wanted to know whether I was bringing pie or rolls to Christmas Eve dinner. Instead, she said, "Honey, I need to talk to you about the holiday." Something in her voice made me stop walking. "Reed's family is coming for Christmas Eve," she said. "His parents, his grandmother, his aunt and uncle. They're flying in from Connecticut." "Okay," I said. "That sounds like a lot of people. We're keeping things small this year. More formal, you know. For Briar's sake." I stood in the parking lot in the cold and said, "What does that mean?" The pause was long enough that I already knew, somewhere in my gut, before she said it. "We just think it would be better if you sat this one out, sweetheart. Just this year. Reed's family runs in certain circles, and Briar wants to make the right impression." I remember the exact quality of the silence after that. The way traffic sounded on the street behind me. The distant hum of the HVAC unit on the roof of my building. "She doesn't want me there," I said. "Not a question." "It's not like that." "Mom, is my sister embarrassed by me?" She didn't answer, and that was the answer. I told her I had to go, and I hung up, and I stood in that parking lot for a few minutes not doing anything. Just standing there. 7 years of being Briar's person. Her high school graduation, her college move-in day, every holiday phone call since she left for medical school. I had shown up for all of it. I had wired money every semester without being asked twice. And I was supposed to spend Christmas Eve at home alone, so she could perform for Reed's family, without me in the picture. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. A text from my cousin Prue. Prue and I have always been close. The kind of cousins who tell each other things. She wrote, "I was at Aunt Karen's earlier and I heard something. You should know." I called her right away. She told me she'd been sitting in the kitchen when she overheard Briar on the phone in the next room, talking to my mother. She hadn't meant to listen, but the walls in my parents' house are thin, and Briar's voice carries when she's upset. Briar had said, verbatim, "I don't want Reed's parents thinking we're a blue-collar family. Isla shows us up smelling like work and talks about job sites, and they're going to ask what she does, and I am not having that conversation." Prue said she almost knocked on the door right then, but she held back. And then later she heard my mother call me, and she knew. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in my truck in the parking lot until it was fully dark. I'm not going to pretend I didn't cry. I did. Not for long. I'm not a long crier. But it hit me in a way I hadn't expected, because I kept thinking about the specific version of Briar I thought I knew. The one who'd called me from the library at midnight when she failed her first anatomy exam. The one I'd stayed on the phone with for 2 hours, talking her back from the edge. The one I'd driven 8 hours round trip in February to help move furniture when her roommate's situation fell apart. Had that person been embarrassed by me the whole time? Had she always been? I thought about Christmas Eve. I thought about Reed's parents flying in from Connecticut. I thought about my sister sitting at my parents' dinner table in some new dress, laughing and charming everyone, while I was supposed to be home alone so the illusion could stay clean. And then I stopped crying, because something colder and clearer moved in where the hurt had been. Christmas Eve, I ordered Pad CU and watched old movies and went to bed at 11. My phone had a few texts. Prue, a friend from work, a client confirming a job date. Nothing from Briar, nothing from my parents. I checked Instagram before I went to sleep. There they were, the photos. My mother's house lit up, the table set with the good dishes. Briar in a dark green dress with her hair done, leaning into Reed, who was tall and easy and smiling for the camera, like someone who had never had a single uncomfortable moment in his life. Reed's mother was there. His father. Everyone laughing. The caption on Briar's post said, "So grateful for the people who matter most." I put my phone face down on the nightstand. The next morning, I made coffee and opened my laptop. I'd logged into the university's tuition portal so many times I could do it in my sleep. I knew Briar's student ID, her date of birth, the security questions. I went in and looked at the upcoming semester balance. $24,000, due in 3 weeks. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I navigated to the payment settings, found my card on file, and removed it. The system asked me to confirm. It told me this action would affect the student's enrollment status. I read that sentence twice. Then I clicked yes. I closed the laptop and finished my coffee. I sat there and waited to feel terrible about it. I waited for the guilt to show up, the second guessing, the urge to log back in and put everything back the way it was. What came instead was something I hadn't felt in years, quiet. Not emptiness, just quiet. I went to the gym, I made eggs, I had a genuinely good Christmas day. The call came at 7:48 the following morning. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone lit up with Briar's name. I let it ring. It rang again, then a text, "Call me right now." I got an email from the school. Then another, "Isla, call me." Then a voicemail I played on speaker while I washed my mug. Her voice was tight and high, cycling between panic and fury in a way that told me she hadn't slept. She said there had to be a mistake. She said I needed to fix this immediately. She said she couldn't enroll for next semester if this wasn't resolved. I put the phone down. My mother called an hour later. I picked up. Isla. Her voice had that particular quality, controlled anger dressed up as concern. "What did you do?" "Good morning, Mom." "Do not. Briar is beside herself. She says your payment was canceled." I removed my card from the account. "Why on earth would you do that?" I took a breath. "Because she told you she didn't want me at Christmas, because she was embarrassed that I'm an electrician. Because you went along with it. Because I sat at home on Christmas Eve while she performed for Reed's family, using the life I've been funding. That's why." Silence. "She didn't mean it the way you're taking it," my mother said. "She's under enormous pressure. Medical school is." She said she didn't want Reed's parents to think you were a blue-collar family. Those were her exact words, Mom. And you know they were. A different kind of silence. "You're going to ruin her future over a dinner." "No," I said. "She made choices, and those choices have consequences. That's all." I could hear her switching tactics, her voice going softer and more careful. She said she understood I was hurt. She said of course I had every right to feel that way. But Briar was young. She didn't always think before she spoke. And surely I wasn't going to let one bad decision derail everything she'd worked toward. I said, "She's 26. She knew exactly what she was saying." My mother said, "So what do you want? An apology. I can make that happen." And there it was. What the call was really about. Not whether I was okay. Not what Briar had done. Just, what is the minimum required to restore the arrangement? "I don't want anything from her," I said. "I'm done." I hung up. I should have seen it earlier. I've thought about that a lot since then. The way Briar stopped mentioning when her friends were having events, and when I'd ask, she'd say, "Oh, it was nothing. Don't worry about it." The way she had never once posted a photo with me on social media. Not one in 2.5 years, while she posted everything else. The way, when I visited campus to drop off a package she needed urgently, she came down to the parking lot to meet me instead of inviting me up. I told myself I was paranoid. I made excuses. She's busy, she's stressed, she's in a new world now. She was. She just decided I didn't fit inside it. The calls came in over the next 48 hours like a slow-moving flood. My father, who sounded tired and uncomfortable. "This has gone far enough. My aunt, you know how she is. She doesn't always think." 2 cousins, who barely acknowledged my birthday, suddenly had opinions about what family meant and how you didn't walk away from your own. One of them used the word cruel. Not one of them had called on Christmas Eve to check on me. Not one of them had said anything when I was the one sitting at home alone. But now that the money had stopped, everyone had thoughts. Then Briar went a different direction. The posts started appearing 3 days later. Vague, careful, written in the particular language people use when they want sympathy without accountability. It's hard when the people supposed to be there for you to disappear. I've realized that generosity only flows in one direction in some relationships. Being in med school is the loneliest thing I've ever done. Some days you find out who actually shows up. Her friends commented heart emojis, and you deserve so much better, and you are so strong, and stay in your light, babe. I read through the comments once. Then I put my phone in a drawer and went back to work. What happened with Reed, I found out later through Prue. He'd seen the posts too, and something hadn't sat right with him. Briar had told him the payment issue was a banking error, a misunderstanding that would be sorted. He'd believed her, mostly. But he was restless about it. He called the university's billing department, said he was a family friend, trying to help sort out a payment issue, and it took a few transfers before someone confirmed what he was looking for. The payment history on the account showed consistent funding from a third party named Isla, over 2+ years, and that party had recently removed themselves. No error, a deliberate removal. He went to Briar and asked her directly. She said it was complicated. She said I had offered. And it was always going to be temporary. She said she'd planned to pay me back once she was working. He asked her why she'd let him believe, for the entire time they'd been together, that her parents were covering her tuition. She didn't have a clean answer for that. Then he asked whether she had invited me to Christmas Eve dinner. Whether she'd told me not to come. Whether she had said what she'd said about not wanting his family to think she came from a blue-collar background. According to Prue, who heard parts of this secondhand, she couldn't deny that part. He left her apartment that night, texted her the next morning that he needed space, that he had to figure out what kind of person he was actually with. I didn't feel satisfied when I heard that. I felt sad. The way you feel when something bad that was always coming finally arrives. Briar had spent years making herself smaller, hiding pieces of herself, performing a version of her life that wasn't real, and the one person she'd been closest to had seen through it. She'd lost something genuine in exchange for an image she'd built on borrowed money and borrowed identity. But I didn't call her. I didn't reach out. That wasn't damage I had made. The meltdown happened on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a crew meeting, going over the week's schedule for the hotel project. A big commercial job. Everyone needed to be clear on timing when the front door of my office opened hard enough to bounce off the wall. My receptionist made a startled sound. I looked up. Briar was standing in the doorway, her hair pulled back, eyes red-rimmed, wearing a coat I'd never seen. She looked like she hadn't properly slept since Christmas. "You did this," she said. Not a question, not quite directed at me, more like a statement to the room. "We're in the middle of something," I said, keeping my voice even. "Give me 10 minutes. "No." She stepped fully inside. I don't have anywhere to go, Isla. I can't re-enroll, do you understand that? I'm going to lose my spot. Briar. You've been paying for years, you don't just get to stop. You made a promise. The room was completely still. My crew looked at her, then at me, then at the floor. I said, calmly, I made a promise to support my sister. I didn't make a promise to support someone who told her mother she didn't want me around because she was ashamed of where she came from. Her face went red. You don't know what it's like. The world I'm trying to get into, Reed's family comes from a completely different. He broke up with you, I said. She stopped. Because you lied to him, I said. Not because of me. Her mouth opened, then closed. Hank stood up from his chair. He's been with me 6 years, a big quiet man who chooses his words carefully. He said, Ma'am, this is a place of business. I'm going to need you to leave. I'm her sister. And this is her business, he said. You're welcome to call ahead and make an appointment. She looked at him, then at me, waiting for me to step in the way I always had, to soften it, to say, okay, come on, let's go talk in the back. I have done that every single time, my entire adult life. I have always been the one who stepped in and made it easier. I didn't move. Something crossed Briar's face that I hadn't seen since she was a teenager, raw and young and genuinely caught. Then it hardened into something else. She said, very quietly, You're going to regret this. And then she walked out. My parents called together that evening. Conference call, which they had never done before. My father's voice was careful and measured. My mother's was not. She said I had embarrassed Briar in front of her colleagues. Said I had gone out of my way to humiliate her. Said no matter what had happened between us, I owed her more than that. I said, You know what I've given her. Better than anyone. My father said, Isla, you're tearing this family apart. I said, I didn't start this. I said, Briar started this the moment she decided I was something to be hidden. I said, I think we're done here. I hung up. The weeks that followed were strange. Quiet in a way that took some getting used to, because for years I had been the person everyone called, the person who showed up, the person who covered things. My phone didn't ring the same way. Nobody checked in, because nobody had really been checking in. They'd been checking on what I could do. The difference was just visible now. Prue texted regularly. A friend from my crew and I got coffee on a Saturday. I signed a new contract with a boutique hotel going up downtown. Good detailed work, the kind of project I love. I drove home from the site one evening, with the windows down even though it was cold, and I noticed I felt lighter than I had in years. A physical thing, like something I'd been carrying, had finally been put down. Briar texted 3 weeks later. It was short. She said she'd applied for a federal loan and worked out a payment plan with the school. She said she was going to be okay. And then she said, I know I hurt you. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet, but I know that I did. I read it twice. I didn't respond that night. Not as punishment, I was past that. But because I genuinely didn't know what to say yet, and I've learned the hard way not to fill silence just because silence feels uncomfortable. Here is what I know now, on the other side of all of it. For years, I told myself that being generous with my family was a form of love. And it was at the start, but somewhere along the way, I let it become the entire basis of my value to them. I wasn't a sister or a daughter. I was a resource. I was useful. And the moment I started thinking of myself as more than that, the moment I expected to sit at the table with the people I was feeding, that was apparently asking too much. I am a woman who wires hospitals. I have pulled cable through walls at 3 a.m. when the job demanded it. I have managed a payroll and held a crew together through slow quarters and built something real from practically nothing. I have done all of this, while also quietly, without ever making a production of it, putting my sister through medical school. I am not embarrassing. I am not something to be kept in a parking lot, or introduced as just family, or left off the guest list when the right people come to dinner. And if the people at that Christmas Eve table couldn't see that, if the price of my seat was to pretend I was something less than what I am, then I wasn't going to keep paying it. I chose myself. It was late coming. It cost me something real. And I would do it again, exactly the same way, without hesitating, without looking back. Some choices feel like losing until you realize you've been carrying a weight so long, you forgot what it felt like not to. Now, I know.